Thank you. That's just what I needed. So what have you been doing all these years?
Where would you like me to start from? Teens? 20s? 30s? Yeah, I think 30s might be easiest because we'll be here all night, otherwise wouldn't we, Ron?
I told you what we were doing in my letters. The ones I sent to the post office box in Australia. You sent me the details on the back of a postcard a few years back.
I've never been to Australia and I never sent any cards.
But then how come we... Dad.
Ugh. Ronnie, why would he do that?
Come on, do you really have to ask?
Australia. Trust him to pick the furthest place he could.
So where have you been then?
Well, the last few years, south of France. A little place outside Montpellier. I have a boutique there.
How nice for you.
Why didn't you write? I mean, all those years you were only in France. Why didn't you call?
You know why. You know what he was like. I was terrified of him. That's why I left. The abuse just...
Dad never raised a hand to you.
He didn't have to. You know what it was like. I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to go. I did come back a few years later to the house in Romford. I got as far as the driveway and I saw Archie come in and out a couple of times. But you girls, you were gone.
So why didn't you just ask Dad where we were?
Do you really think he would have told me? I knew then that I would never see you again. That's when I went to France for a fresh start. I just needed to forget.
Why didn't you ask somebody else? I mean, you could have asked Auntie Peg.
Yeah, well, we didn't really get along in those days. And the Mitchells, well, they stick together, don't they? Still do, from what I can see. And then I read the story about Archie's murder. And it mentioned Walford and that he'd left a widow, Peggy. And it took me a moment to realise it was the Peggy that I used to know. And it mentioned 2 daughters. My darling daughters. And I knew that you would stay close and support each other just like you always did. This must be a terrible time for you. Have they found him, the person who killed your father?
No.
Look, I realise that you're grieving and that you're trying to make sense of everything that's happening. But for me, this is such a relief. Because finally, I can come home.
Well, I'm really, really pleased that everything has worked out so nicely for you. No, do you know what? She needs to hear this, all right? Our dad is dead. Yes, he's been murdered and the maniac that did it is still out there somewhere. And you want us to pull out the bunting and throw you some big homecoming party? Well, guess what? This is not your home.
That's enough.
No, actually, it's not. All right, you can't just swan back into our lives like this. You could have found us before now. You could have tracked us down. People do it all the time.
She's right. You could have tried.
I didn't know where to start. And the longer I stayed away, the harder it got. In the end, I just convinced myself that you didn't need me. But now with Archie gone,
We still don't need you. Auntie Peggy's been more of a mum to us than you ever were.
I'm sure Peggy's been a really, really good auntie to you. But she's not your mother. She's not even your stepmother. Not really. I'm afraid that her marriage to Archie was a sham. When your father died, he was still married to me.